Okay, before all of you Seiko fanboys start roasting me in the comments section, I want to make something very clear. I love Seiko. I own Seikos. I will probably make a video at some point about why I love Seiko, and I plan on purchasing more Seikos in the future. However, no watch company is without sin. So today I'm going to tell you the 6 reasons why I hate Seiko. Number 1, too many limited editions. Now I'm going to talk about my personal experience with my SPB143J1 I am a big fan of the Alpinist. There's tons of interesting history behind this watch. It's also an incredibly unique sports watch. However, I remember when the Hodinkee limited edition, the Blue Alpinist, came out. It was a beautiful watch. I gladly would have purchased one of these watches, but by the time I found out that it existed, they were sold out. Okay, whatever, not a big deal. I missed out on that one, but this is a reoccurring theme with Seiko. For some people, it's limited edition divers. For me, it was the Alpinist, and this has happened more than once. This last year, Seiko released the Ginza limited edition, and once again, I was busy having a life and missed out. The Ginza has this deep blue-green kaleidoscope-like dial, which is just mesmerizing. And the case is elegant, but still very modern. If this watch was a regular release, Seiko would sell so many of them. It's not like this watch is unobtainable. I can buy it on Chrono24 or eBay, but if I do that, I'm looking at paying double the original retail for a used, unregulated mid-grade movement. Now this is just my personal experience, but for any watch enthusiast that's a fan of Seiko, I'm sure you have had this happen where Seiko comes out with this awesome limited edition and it was gone before you even knew it existed. Hardware inconsistencies. So straps, bracelets, crystals. I am specifically talking about hardware here. We will talk about the ongoing problem with the misaligned chapter rings and the slightly askewed hour markers when we talk about quality control later on in the video. There is no rhyme or reason to what hardware Seiko chooses to use in any of their watches. We're gonna come back to my Alpinist for a minute, and as you can see, it's on an aftermarket strap. Why? Because the strap it came on was absolute garbage. It was the most plasticky, chintzy, I don't even think I would call it leather strap I had ever seen. I have had my Alpinist for a while, but at the time when I bought it, it was retailing for around $600 and I got it for like $450-ish. It's not some entry-level watch. It's not an SKX or some cheap quartz that you can get in a department store. Is it too much to ask that it comes on a strap that doesn't feel like it's too cheap to be in a 1980s Timex? Don't even get me started about bracelets. Some of them are awesome. Some of them seem like an afterthought, and you never know what you're getting regardless of price. And the crystals. I mentioned this in my Seiko Samurai video. For those of you who are unaware, the Seiko Samurai comes with a Hardlex crystal. Nothing wrong with Hardlex. It's a cheaper alternative to sapphire, and I don't have a problem with having an entry-level watch with a Hardlex crystal. It's still gonna be very scratch resistant and it's gonna be more shatter resistant. What I do have a problem with is I can go and get a quartz-powered Seiko Le Grand Sport for under $200 with a sapphire crystal. Then I can turn around and spend $700 on a diver and it has a Hardlex crystal. It just doesn't make much sense to me. Number 3, the price creep. We have all noticed the price creep over the years with Seiko. It used to be that Seiko was the best deal on the market. You could buy an SKX or you can buy a SARB 033 for a great price. And you would have a watch that no other watch company could compete with in that price range. This is no longer true. Notwithstanding the fact that both of these models have been discontinued, Seiko just isn't the best deal on the market for an entry-level watch anymore. But they should be. Economies of scale dictates that as a company gets larger and more efficient, their cost per item goes down. When a micro brand buys a Seiko movement and a sapphire crystal from another producer, they cannot compete in terms of cost per item with a huge company like Seiko. But now we're getting micro brand products that have better hardware and are similarly priced to entry-level Seikos. Orient, a subsidiary of Seiko, also makes great watches for a better price. In terms of entry-level fare, Orient is the new Seiko. I suppose this is because Seiko has been making this obvious push to go up market. But sadly, increasing your prices without increasing the quality of your product is not the way to do that. Number 4, unregulated movements. I know it's a Seiko, and these watches are going to run -15 plus 25 a day, which is expected for an entry-level watch. My problem is, it doesn't matter if I spend $200 on a Seiko, $600 on a Seiko, or $3,000, it's still an unregulated movement. Not just their entry-level 4-hour movements, but their mid-grade 6-hour 35 movement runs between -15 to plus 25 seconds a day. The watches just end up drifting all over the place, and over time this becomes a problem. My SARB 017 is losing a minute a day. I love my Alpinist. It's one of the watches that got me really excited about Seiko, so I'm going to get it serviced. But I've had this watch long enough that it's out of warranty, and what was I supposed to do? If it was running -16 plus 26 a day, was I supposed to send it into Seiko? I have done it with Oris when my watch wasn't running within spec, but am I really gonna do that with a Seiko? I have noticed that my Solida-based movements in my 2 Oris watches seem to be more consistent and less drifty. I have a $1,200 diver, and when I first got the watch, it was running about +2 a day. It's a year later, and now it's running -12 a day. That's a lot of drift for a $1,200 watch. Number 5, quality control. Seiko's quality control is awful. Now, I've been fortunate enough that I've had pretty good luck with my Seikos, but we've all heard the horror stories about the misaligned chapter rings and the slightly askewed hour markers. They're mass produced, and there's gonna be some bad watches that slip through. But with Seiko, it's literally a coin flip as to what I'm going to get when I'm purchasing these watches from the Japanese domestic market. I've had to send a couple back because of this, and that's not easy when you're buying from gray market retailers. Seiko really needs better quality control. Number 6, branding. Seiko is one of the biggest watch companies in the world and sells watches at every price point. But one of the consequences of marketing to every demographic is it creates a lack of prestige. When you buy a Rolex or Omega, even somebody who doesn't know that much about watches understands the cachet of the brand, if nothing else. They don't know anything about watches, but they know that you have a nice watch. Is it fair to compare Seiko to luxury watch brands? Well, yes and no. You can buy Seikos anywhere from $100 to $6,000. And for people who are not in the know, your watch is just a Seiko. This also applies to Grand Seiko. Just because it has the word grand in front of it doesn't make a difference to most people. They don't understand the accuracy of the spring drive or how difficult Zaratsu polishing is. To them, it's also just a Seiko. Seiko has done a terrible job with marketing in the last 10 years, at least in the US. This is why people buy fashion watches instead of entry-level Seikos. They don't know the difference. And Seiko has done a terrible job of making that difference known. The problem with wearing a watch from a brand that has a reputation for cheap entry-level watches is people just see the word Seiko on the dial and the conversation never gets started. Say what you want, but watch enthusiasts want you to notice their watch, because at the end of the day, we want to talk about watches. And those are the 6 things I hate about Seiko. Like I said earlier, I love Seiko, love the company, I own Seikos, and I'll probably be making that video very soon about everything I love about Seiko, so be on the lookout for that video.